Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cavs Insider. I'm Dan Labbe. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to talk all things Cavaliers Bulls with our Cavaliers reporting team. Chris Haynes, Joe Vardon, and Chris Fedor will all call in. Of course, the Cavaliers lost their first playoff game of 2015 last night, 99-92. Game 2 is tomorrow night, Wednesday, 7 p.m. at the Q. That game will be on TNT. As promised, though, let's start off with our Cavaliers beat reporter Chris Haynes joining me via phone. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing fine, man. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. And Chris, look, as you go through playoff series, as you go through the playoffs, you're going to lose games. Nobody goes 16-0 through this thing. You look at last night, the Cavaliers didn't play their best game. I guess if you want to be optimistic about it, they didn't play their best game and they still had a chance to win it. Did it change your feelings about the series at all?
No, I think I predicted Chicago to get that first game. I really did think that layoff was going to be a concern. And just not the layoff by itself, but the layoff added with the new roster, the new lineups that David Blatt had to shuffle around throughout the course of the week. You know, it was basically an experiment out there. He's trying to experiment to see what he has going. He had a great nucleus going before Kevin Love and JR went down. So it was just an unfortunate situation that you combine the layoff, you combine Kevin Love season in his shoulder surgery and J.R. Smith's suspension. It was just a recipe for what happened in Game 1. So I kind of expected that to occur.
You mentioned J.R. Smith. You know, Iman Shumpert came off, hit 4 threes, but, you know, he didn't quite do some of the things that J.R. Smith does. How much did they miss him last night?
Well, they definitely miss him. And Shumpert played an excellent game. But, you know, one thing that happened in the first quarter that I don't think people were talking enough about is I think part of the reason why the Bulls got off to such a quick start was because of how Shumpert played in the first quarter. And what I mean by that is they had Joakim Noah on Shumpert in that quarter. And basically he was laying off of Shumpert, daring him, you know, enticing him to take that long shot, to take that long three. And any shooter, any wing player, when you have that much space, you're going to let it fly. That's what you're told. You're told to take what the defense gives you. And he had to shoot it. And so the Bulls' mindset and their game plan was, well, hey, if Shumpert is taking these shots, that's better for us. It's better, you know, we'd rather have him taking it than Kyrie or LeBron. And Shumpert went 2 for 7 in that first quarter, and he shot 4 threes in that quarter. And so that was really one of the reasons why they got off to such a good start. Now, Shumpert went on to have a great game, but you know, that game plan early on, that strategy, I think that's something that a lot of people aren't talking about. And I think that was a tremendous tactic by Coach Thibodeau and his staff.
Chris, you look at Pau Gasol, and, you know, this guy's been in the league since 2001, and he's been hitting those 15 to 18-footers probably since about 2001. What was wrong with the Cavaliers' defense last night that just kept allowing Gasol to slide free and get those shots?
Well, you know, if it was easy to be done, you know, the Cavs would have had a defense execution plan ready for that. The thing is, when you got Derrick Rose, when you set a nice hard solid screen for Derrick Rose, he's going to turn the corner. And once he turns the corner, you're going to force a big to help. And so you have Kyrie on the side, on the tip, and then you have Tristan Thompson or Mozgov, whoever that big may be, having to get in front of him and leaving Paul Gasol open. Now, it's not Kyrie's fault, or it's not even the big that's coming over for the help. It's not even his fault. It's the backside rotation's fault. A lot of times that was Shumpert not getting over on the backside rotation to get over and take that shot away from Pau Gasol. It was all about rotation and timing. And another thing was this. I think the Cavs, being that they played small ball for the most of the game, I think in Game 1 they wanted Gasol to take shots. Not wide open shots, but just some contested mid-range shots rather than, you know, him going to work down in the paint. Now they need to rethink that. And I think that's the conundrum that Coach Blatt is dealing with right now. And I think that's something that he was really going over in practice today.
Yeah, it really is pick your poison with this Bulls team. Much different than the Boston series. Chris, win or lose this series, I think Cavs fans are going to learn to dislike Jimmy Butler a whole lot. You know, as good as Derrick Rose is, he gets the headlines. Of course, Pau Gasol does too. Jimmy Butler is incredible on both ends of the floor. How important was he last night to that Bulls win?
Yeah, he was definitely important. He's one of the guys, one of the few guys. Now, let's get this straight. He can't stop LeBron. I expect LeBron to go off on him and whoever else is in his way in game 2. But Jimmy Butler, you look at the size he has, the physique he has, the body stature he has. He's one of the few guys that can really take some of LeBron's, bruising. He can't take it to the point where he's going to stop him, but he can do it where it's going to give LeBron some problems. And that's what happened last night. And part of it was LeBron, I think he had a pre-designed plan going into the game, trying to get everybody involved. Being that it was a lot of guys who haven't been in this type of position before, a lot of guys that's playing in different roles, he took it upon himself to try to make sure they fit in, and they were playing well. And then I think he thought that he could just get it going whenever he needed. And that wasn't the case. Any player, superstar, role player, whatever, you have to get it going. Sometimes you can get it going, at any moment. But against a good Chicago defensive team, that's just going to be harder to do. So LeBron really has to adjust. Today at practice, he said he has to have a different mindset going into game 2. So I definitely think that's a good thing for the Cavaliers and the Cavaliers family.
First time now in his NBA career that David Blatt is going to have to make those adjustments after a playoff loss. What are we going to see different tomorrow?
You know what? I really do think it's premature to change the start lineup because I really don't think that was the problem. I mean, who really thought Mike Miller was going to come in and give you 15 to 20 points? I just don't think that was the issue. And if you go in and if you put Tristan Thompson into that starting lineup, which that's a very well likely scenario, and Coach Black didn't want to divulge what he was planning on doing, you're going to weaken up your bench even more because you're going to have Shump and Tristan Thompson in that starting unit. And so you have to rely on your starters heavily. So I really think you should. I think he's going to change the lineup. I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but I think that's his next move. I don't necessarily believe that's the right move, but I think he's in a situation where he feels he has to do something because one more loss, I mean, in game 2, they lose game 2, it's going to be a very troubling situation for him.
Last question, looking at that starting front court, Timofey Mozgov last night, a little up and down. He had his moments, but certainly struggled at times. Can the Cavs get better from him, and can they expect better from him?
Well, the thing is, he's not a good pick-and-roll player because when you play the pick-and-roll, that means the big has to come out and step out and help on the pick-and-roll, switch on the pick and whatnot. And he's not good moving lateral. He's not quick enough. And that's why you see we've been seeing, especially during the later part of the regular season, you've been seeing Tristan Thompson finish the game at the 5 because Tristan is somebody, if need be, you can just start switching everything. And Tristan can get out on the point guard and contest to keep the point guard in front of him and contest. He did that last night. Derrick Rose was hit some tough jumpers over Trish, but that's exactly what you want your bigs to do. Timofey Mozgov just doesn't have the luxury of having the foot speed to play the pick and roll game. He's more of a guy that wants to stay around the painted area and cause havoc that way. The Bulls, they're just not going to let you do that. So can you expect better? It all depends on the Chicago Bulls mindset and what they do and their plan of attack. But if I'm the Bulls, I don't change a thing.
All right, Chris Haynes, our Cavaliers beat reporter. Thanks for the time, Chris.
Anytime, Dan. Take care.
All right, that was Chris Haynes. We'll have Joe Vardon coming up shortly, and then Chris Fedor will wrap things up on our show. The Cavaliers coming off a Game 1 loss, 99-92, to the Chicago Bulls. They play tomorrow night. That's Wednesday, 7 o'clock on TNT. It's not a must-win, but you don't want to fall behind 2-0 heading to Chicago. All right, let's bring in now another piece of our Cavaliers reporting team and the man who also covers LeBron-James, Joe Vardon, joining us. Joe, how are you?
Well, Haynes and I just passed each other on the way out of the building so we can blabber on without the rest of the media corps hearing us. And, we did our special handshake. It was really great.
I was kind of hoping you guys would, use the same phone. We could just have, a phone handoff or something.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it.
Joe, LeBron James admitted today that Game 1 was not his best performance. He can do better. He had 19, 15, and 9, but he also shot 9 of 22. Really wasn't able to take over the game late like I think a lot of people were expecting. What did you think of LeBron's game last night?
Well, like everybody else, everybody and their mother, including me, wrote this morning that they basically lost because LeBron didn't play like he usually does. So that's inarguable. I thought a little bit more highly of his performance than I think others did, just because I felt like his rebounds were real rebounds. What I mean by that is when Kevin's on the floor and, before that when Andy was around, really all year you had seen, first of all, you saw LeBron's rebound numbers go way down. And then secondly, the boards that he did get, in many cases, were just those ones that just kind of fall into your hands. Maybe they bounce away from the hoop and they're over by the sideline, like those kinds of things. And last night he was crashing the boards. He really was. And then the next thing is, especially as the game wore on, in the second, third, fourth quarters, he was really active defensively. And then, I also have to give him credit because he's without his top two sort of spot shooters, of course, with Kevin and JR. And in the third quarter, he trusted the guys who were replacing them. He trusted Iman Shumpert. He trusted Delly. And did what he used to do during the regular season and last round against Boston, which is drive like crazy into the lane, draw people onto him, and then kick out to one of those guys for a three. And doing that not only stemmed the tide of a 15-0 Bulls run, but, it brought the Cavs back into it. So, you can't, on the one hand, you cannot argue that LeBron did not play and more specifically score like himself, and had he done that, we'd be talking about a team that's up 1-0 right now. But I also don't think you can be overly critical of him because he certainly gave the effort in other areas.
You mentioned that new personnel that he had to play with here and there, guys he hadn't been playing with a whole lot. Did that contribute a little bit to some of the turnovers? When he goes in the air and tries to throw a pass, maybe he's used to a Kevin Love or a J.R. Smith being in a spot, but Iman Shumpert's not there, or Mike Miller's not there, whoever it may be. Do you think that contributed a little bit?
Dan, I don't. And just because turnovers have been a problem for him all year, and we can't really blame it anymore on, lack of familiarity or whatever else may be the case. He just turns the ball over a lot. He just does this year. And it doesn't matter who's on the floor. I mean, he admitted, last night that the really rotten turnovers he committed where he was just jumping into the air and looking for Kyrie. I mean, LeBron, no one knows the game better than him who's playing it. He's a student of the game. He knows you can't do that. He explained right away why you can't do that. But he still does it. And I don't know why that is. And I don't know why, given that he is so cognizant of his own turnovers, why he hasn't been able to cut down on them. But it's just, I guess, something that he has to live through and play through and compensate for in other ways. And most of the time this year he's done that. Last night, was one of those rare cases where he didn't.
As this series goes on, and if it is in fact a long series, I worry a little bit about him having to guard the four a lot and how physical he has to be, and also what that does to the Cavaliers' perimeter defense to have him, down low as opposed to roaming the perimeter. What impact do you think that would have on him over the course of, let's say, a 6 or 7 game series?
Well, I mean, Joakim Noah just did nothing last night. He was really, really poor. And, when LeBron was on him, it was almost like giving him a break. Now, I just said a couple minutes ago that LeBron really tried defensively, but that was because that was more within the context of having to switch onto so many different players and pick up the guy who was hot momentarily. And, LeBron said today he would rather lock in on a guy or two. But it's just not how it usually works for him, and I wish that would be the case too. I mean, Dan, you and I have been talking about this for more than a week now. I'm pushing for them to go bigger and start Tristan and leave LeBron alone at the 3, and change, become more of a defensive first team and forget about some of the spacing issues. Spacing only works if the ball goes in the hoop. I mean, if Mike Miller and James Jones aren't going to knock down those threes, the Bulls aren't going to run out there anyway. They can win other ways. So, this is what I've been saying, I would like to see. I mean, didn't see it in game 1. Kind of doubt we'll see it in game 2, but That is my answer to it.
Yeah, well, and you know what? For all that spacing that they may have had yesterday, they only scored 92 points, and Iman Shumpert hit 4 of their 7 3-pointers. So you might be onto something there.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, Shumpert played great. And let's not forget, the best three-point shooter the Cavs had in round one wasn't Kevin, wasn't JR, and it was Kyrie Irving. Kyrie can stretch the floor. He can stretch the floor for himself. He can stretch the floor for LeBron because he's so good, and he can also play without that space. We saw him last night. He's dribbling the ball in one hand and keeping his balance with the other, and then, figuring out ways to duck under Gasol and throw it over Noah. And, these guys are 10 feet taller than him, and the ball's still going in the hoop. It's unreal, the ability that he has to score the ball, and he can provide some of those, some of the things that JR and Kevin otherwise give. And so, I would like to see it, and then especially with the idea that some of that spacing will come back when JR returns in Game 3. But boy, this series would look a whole lot different tied at 1 than with the Bulls up 2-0. That goes without saying.
That's true. Joe Vardon, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, and of course, they're all out in Independence today. The Cavaliers held practice and had media availability, so you'll be able to catch everything that they got out of that at cleveland.com/Cavs. Later today, they'll each have posts, and we might have some photos, some video, things like that. And, of course, the full coverage tomorrow night of Cavs Bulls Game 2. It's at 7 o'clock. We'll have the live in-game chat. We'll have the broadcast hour. We'll have the post-game show. We'll have reaction from Twitter. We will have, let's see what else, videos, post-game video. We'll have game photos, all kinds of coverage at cleveland.com/Cavs tomorrow night. So check that out. All right, let's bring in our last guest. He's Chris Fedor. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dan. What's going on, bud?
Not too much, Chris. Okay, you're David Blatt. What adjustments are you making?
Well, not leave Pau Gasol wide open to bang 15-footers is where I would start here, Dan. It's funny because David Blatt mentioned today at practice that there are 12 different ways that you can guard the pick and roll. 12. I would think leaving a guy wide open doesn't go on those 12. So I think that's the first adjustment that the Cavs have to make. And I think the other thing, Dan, that he has to consider is another starting lineup. Look, the starting lineup that he put out there for Game 1, I understand that he doesn't have Kevin Love and he doesn't have J.R. Smith, and there are realities that he's going to have to deal with throughout this entire series. But in Eastern Conference semifinal game number 1, to toss out a starting lineup that played 0 minutes combined in the regular season is a little bit baffling to me, especially given the fact that James Jones is somebody who looked like he was a part of the rotation, not necessarily Mike Miller. Maybe he was thinking Mike Miller could get hot from three-point range. Maybe he was thinking that Mike Miller could chase around Mike Dunleavy a little bit better. I don't know his thinking. He didn't really explain his thinking. But it's going to be important in Game 2, Dan, for the Cavs to get off to a fast start. They started slow last night. They started slow in the series against Boston. And I think going with a new starting lineup could help them start a little bit faster.
Chris, I asked Chris Haynes about this. The play of Timofey Mozgov. He's a guy that when he's out there with Kevin Love, he can just sort of be that rim protector and that finisher. He looked really uncomfortable last night. Did you think that?
Yeah, I did, and I thought, Dan, there were times in the Boston series that he looked uncomfortable as well. Everybody knows that it looks like he washes his hands in butter, and he has a hard time hanging on to the basketball. But if he's not going to get rebounds, if he's not going to block shots or alter shots, if he's going to get lost on defense at times, it's hard to see a reason why you're going to play him, because offensively he doesn't provide the floor spacing that LeBron-James can if he plays 4 and Tristan Thompson plays 5, things along those lines. He doesn't give you enough offensively. What you're expecting from him is all those other things, the little things, and he also can't turn the ball over. Turnovers were a problem against Boston. It seemed like he lost his cool a few times against the Celtics, and last night he just looked completely out of sorts. I don't know if it's because Joakim Noah was being tough and physical, or Taj Gibson, or even Pau Gasol. But look, the playoffs are going to be tough. They're going to be physical, and he has to play a little bit bigger than what he did. I thought he started to play big early in the game, but as the game went on and he played more minutes, I thought the words started to show up a little bit, and that's why Tristan Thompson, Dan, played 37 minutes.
Chris, LeBron, of course, last night was asked to defend a lot at the power forward position. He did a little bit of, I don't know what you want to call it, I think you called it free safety at one point. He played some zone a little bit, kind of hanging out outside the lane, depending who he was responsible for. I wonder, though, over the course of a long series, if he has to defend the four and he has to bang down low, how do you think that impacts him, and how do you think it impacts the team's perimeter defense?
I think it impacts both significantly. I mean, look, when you have to bang with those bodies underneath and you're taking shot after shot after shot when you're boxing out or when you're driving to the basket, it is going to take a toll. And I don't care how superhuman LeBron is. We're talking about somebody who's playing more than 40 minutes in the playoffs, and I know he can handle it. I know he's in great shape. I know he's well conditioned. But those kinds of things can take a lot out of you. If you're relating it to boxing, Dan, it's kind of like getting jabbed throughout the game, and you wonder if it's going to take a toll when things end. And here's the other thing. Can you not make an argument that LeBron James is the second best defensive player on this team behind Iman Shumpert? I think you can. Why would you put your second best defensive player on Chicago's only offensive liability? And I understand, maybe David Blatt wanted to save LeBron, or LeBron wanted to save himself for the offensive end because he's going to have to exude so much energy without J.R. Smith and without Kevin Love. But one of the great things about LeBron is his ability to defend, and putting him on Joakim Noah, to me, is wasting his talent defensively, and I would expect that to change moving forward.
Do you trust David Blatt to make the right adjustments? This is the first time he's come off a playoff loss in the NBA, and he's got to be the coach that has to make those adjustments. Do you think he can do it?
Well, here's the thing, Dan. The Cavs do have to make adjustments, and they have to change how they go about defending the pick and roll and the pick and pop. And he's got to figure out a rotation that he can develop trust in and find a lineup that he feels like can finish the game in the final 6 minutes. All of those things are his responsibility. But there's another reality in this series, in my opinion, and it's why I picked the Cavs to win this series in 7 games. More times than not, the Cavs are going to have the two best players on the court, with LeBron and Kyrie. So I think we can talk about these rotations all we want to, and we can talk about the bench stepping up and making all of these different adjustments. Those things are going to be very, very important going into Game 2. But the bottom line is, Dan, the Cavs will not win 4 times in 7 games against a tough, physical Chicago team if LeBron James does not play better. And I know it's hard to say because he had 19 points, he had 15 rebounds, a team-high 9 assists. LeBron's teams in the playoffs are 7-14 if he fails to get to the 20-point plateau. That's very, very telling. He's got to be more aggressive. He's got to get to the free throw line. He's got to set the tone. There is no Kevin Love. There is no J.R. Smith. LeBron has to be better than what he was last night. Dan, the first basket that he made in the first half, the Cavs were already down 13. The first basket that he made in the second half, the Cavs were trailing by 15. That can't happen. If the Cavs are going to win this series against Chicago, LeBron and Kyrie have to be the 2 best players in 4 of the 7 games. And last night that wasn't the case, and that's why the Cavs lost the game.
All right, that is Chris Fedor, part of our Cavaliers reporting team. Chris, thanks for the time.
You got it, man.
All right, that will do it for another edition of Cavs Insider here on cleveland.com. Thanks to Chris Haynes, Joe Vardon, and Chris Fedor for joining us. As I've said, Game 2 tomorrow night. It's at 7 p.m. It's on TNT. And on Thursday, we will have another live edition of Cavs Insider. If you missed any of this show, we'll have the archive available at cleveland.com/Cavs a little bit later today. I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.